We're here to West Cork. We came round the corner and saw this vast view of the Atlantic Ocean. We knew there and then that this is the place we were looking for.
Peter's original purpose was to create a refuge away from the madness of the modern world.
There's something about the nakedness of the elements. You're forced to look at yourself.
Who could be afraid of eternity looking at that? It is so beautiful.
There was tremendous excitement to get a Tibetan Lama to come to teach.
If you use that intelligence in a good way, then I think enlightenment is quite simple.
He is very unconventional.
I hope we've got the right teacher.
Is Dzogchen a good guy or not?
Disgraced.
So I went down to Dzogchen Beara at the end of 2018 and went down to do a week-long silent retreat, completely burnt out from work. Didn't want to think about work. Last thing I wanted to think about was work. And I was down there. Within 24 hours, all I could think of was, I need to make a film about this place. How am I going to make a film about this place? How will I make a film about this place? So that didn't quite work. But the retreat, it was amazing. And I was just blown away by the setting. I picked up Peter's autobiography. It was just so beautifully written. He had such an amazing voice, even on the page. And I suppose I just assumed he'd passed away. I couldn't believe that that this guy wasn't better known. And when I realised that he was still around, but just living, not as a hermit, but on his own and not seeing anybody, I kind of knew I had to lure him out somehow and somehow convince him to tell me his story. So that was the start of it. I think, like a lot of documentary filmmakers, you're either kind of, I suppose you're trying to either, sometimes you feel really kind of annoyed by something and you're trying to kind of draw attention to it and say, this is wrong, we need to do something about it. And then sometimes it's the other, and you're like, oh wow, this is amazing and I really need to tell people about this and more people should know about this, So that was definitely the kind of the initial spark for why I wanted to make it,
In many ways, Maurice, you can probably speak better to this than I can, because a bit like you, I wasn't aware when we started making this film of this part of the centre's history. And I suppose one of the things, it did take a long time to make this film, but I now think that actually that was a really good thing, because when we first started making the film, it wasn't long after Sagyal Rinpoche had passed away, and all of this had sort of happened to the community. And at that time when we started, it was still very raw and alive, and for a number of years it still was, as they all tried to figure it out personally, individually, and then collectively as a centre and as a larger organisation. So I actually think the fact that our pace slowed down for other reasons kind of helped us cover a very complicated aspect of the history of Dzogchen Beara. Would you like to add to that?
Sagyal Rinpoche was a larger than life character. He was somebody that has, somebody that changed the lives of many people for the better, and also did a lot of damage to quite a lot of other people. God, we had meetings with financiers and stuff, and you start telling them the story and you start telling them about Peter and about the work of the centre. And the minute you mention Sagyal Rinpoche and the kind of controversy, it's like, I like that. Give me more of that. I want to know about that. And we really had to try quite hard to not let the story be completely kind of taken over by that controversy, and to essentially just make the film about his misdemeanors and the abuse. Because I suppose the first thing to say is that film has been made. There has been 2 films made about Sagyal Rinpoche, one in Holland, one in Canada. And to be honest, I just didn't want to make another depressing documentary, I kept bringing it back to why I was inspired by the story in the first place, which is Peter's story. And even though we couldn't shy away from showing the dark sides of the story, I always was like, we need to bring it back to Peter and to that original kind of purity of vision, because that for me was what I wanted to, I suppose, express in the telling of the story. That was the strongest kind of thing I wanted to say.
When Revelations came out, it was heartbreaking. Could this be the end of the whole project? Have I wasted everything I've done for my whole life?
So many people see Dzogchen Beara as their spiritual home.
The only thing that matters is being kind to people and realizing that we're all in this together.